All right, folks, we are live. All right, I'm hoping I got the audio issues fixed this time. So drop me a line in the chat here if for some reason you're getting the echo again or if something is wrong, and then we'll get started in a couple minutes here. Let more people join. Great. I'm glad. Yeah, it was a weird issue. The microphone last time I was getting basically two microphone inputs were happening at once, even though the software told me it wasn't. So that's been fixed at this point. We'll wait maybe 2 or 3 minutes. We're about a minute away right now from 3 o'clock. We'll wait probably 2 or 3 minutes to get started just to let people join. We've got about 6 in here right now. If at any point there is any issue with video or audio quality, please speak up in the chat so I can try to fix it. And like I said in my announcements on this is going to be kind of a relatively short video because this rig is surprisingly not that large, and a lot of the stuff in it is a moving light. So there's not a whole lot to focus, but we'll do the conventional systems and stuff like that. So I'd love for this to be kind of a Q&A type thing. And at any point throughout you have any questions, just throw them in the live chat there and I'll get to them. Keep in mind there is a 10 to 20 second delay, so the messages are a little bit late coming in. Okay. Wait about 1 more minute. Question just came in if Chloe and Dwight, my cats, will be making appearances, and I think they're asleep downstairs right now, but Dwight kind of lingers in and out, so I have the door open just in case. He might make a special guest appearance. On Wednesday when I did one of these, he was laying on my desk throughout almost the whole thing. It was the most peaceful I've ever seen him. Okay, we're about a minute past 3, and we've got a handful of people joined now, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. This is I guess probably the 4th or 5th live stream I've done. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Wood. I'm mostly theatrical LD, but I do kind of a little bit of everything. I've spent a lot of time teaching various places around the country, and I've been trying to do, this is actually the first semester I haven't been teaching somewhere in almost 10 years, and so I'm trying to fill some of that, the void that I have with that, with doing some educational content here on YouTube and on Instagram and places like that. So go check me out on Instagram. I like to post a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff of what I do. There's a link in the description for this video. But today's video is kind of a continuation of the one that I made on Wednesday of this week. That one was a little rough. I apologize for that. But on Wednesday, we took a two-dimensional light plot that was made in Vectorworks and transformed that into three-dimensional space, imported it here into Capture, which is the visualization program that I use, and then brought in the scenic model that was built in SketchUp as well. So first question just came in, what kind of mouse do I use to move around Capture? I have had this mouse for probably 10 years now. It's a Logitech performance mouse. And I'm holding down Shift and Control and doing different things with it to manipulate the screen. I've tried some of the 3D mice and stuff, and they make me feel really old. I'm sure that they're great. I've had a workflow that works for so long. The thing I like about this is it has a lot of side buttons and stuff like that, so I can map those to different things. I've got a map to different spaces on my desktop. I've got middle buttons and extra buttons that I can do all kinds of cool stuff with. So, okay, so today's video, I'm going to be taking the instruments that we imported last week, and I'm going to be focusing them inside of the Capture rig. So it's a pretty simple process, and again, a lot of these are moving lights, so I'm not going to do a whole lot with those. But let's go and get started. I'm going to get my face off the screen so you don't have to look at me. That's better. Okay, so to start off here, I've got one main document that I'm working with when I'm doing this, and that's my channel hookup. So if you're not super familiar with theatrical paperwork, a channel hookup is basically a list of all of your lights in channel number order Right now you can see there's a lot of blank fields as well. The dimmer, the circuit, DMX, that's all blank because we don't actually have addresses assigned yet. Our production electrician will be doing that this week. But the things that I'm concerned with right now are my channel numbers, what degree all of my different lenses are, as well as kind of a purpose, a color, and a gobo. And you'll see as we start to go through here, I'll be dropping in some gobos, dropping in some color in capture. I've already done some of that just to speed up some time because I knew that would be kind of boring to watch. And I've already assigned lenses as well. So mostly what we're doing is some color and some gobo work today as well as focusing. So I'll have that open kind of over on a secondary monitor just in case I need to reference it. Typically, if I was doing, I would be doing this a little bit later in the process when I already have a magic sheet and things like that built. And if this was a new space, it would take me a little bit more time. But because I've worked in this venue so much, I know exactly where I want everything, and I don't really have to spend a whole lot of time referencing that paperwork. And hopefully as we go through today, we'll find a few things that are not going to work, which will mean they'll have to do a last-minute plot update as well. So let's dive right in. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a live view here on this screen. And you can see I already have a couple of lights on it. I'll zoom down. And if you notice on the top left corner, you can see where it says shift, that's red. Basically, those are my modifier keys. So as I'm moving around, I'm holding down my middle mouse button to orbit around. And if I hold down shift, you see it turns red. And this is how I move basically the position of that camera. If I hold down command instead, it pivots around the point that the camera is on. So I like to do this with a couple of different views. I like to have a front view, and then down here I like to have a live view, sometimes from the side, sometimes from the point of view of the fixture that I'm focusing. So if you saw on Instagram a couple of months ago when my team and I worked on Holiday Inn at City Springs, even during our previs, we had an overhead camera. I put the field of view to like 100 degrees or something ridiculous like that. And that way our programmer Dalton could see exactly where all of his moving lights were from above, as well as the front view that we were actually using for the rendering, which was pretty cool. Let me turn off project information in here just so we have a little extra screen real estate. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn some of these lights that are on off. I'm selecting them here in my fixture list, and then I'm just going to go like this. I had those on just for dramatic effect when I opened up the window here. That's how I know what they are already. Excuse me. Okay, so now I've got nothing selected. I'm going to start all the way up here at the top of my list. So you can see all of our channel information and stuff like that has been pulled in already. All of that information came in from our Vectorworks import. So if you remember when we did that, it asked us to match certain fixtures to certain things, and we did all of that mapping, and one of the fields we imported was channel number. Unit number on here is not super important because, again, like there's no positions on here, so the unit number got imported. Not super important for what we're doing. The channel number is the most important thing because that's what I'll use to cross-reference between capture and my channel hookup. So if we look at the channel hookup, we see basically channels 1 through 10 are a top wash, and then 11, 12, 13 are also a top wash that are maybe a slightly different purpose. They're on kind of on top of this header unit up here. So I'm going to get started. Let me move this back onto my screen. And I'm going to just grab the first few fixtures. So I'm going to grab channel 1, and down here I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. And we can see the light has come on a little bit. I could change color if I wanted to. I don't really want to. One of the things I'm going to do real quick is I've got a lot of ambient light in this display up here. You can see a lot of the scenery. I like to turn the ambient light down in one of my displays and leave the other one up a little bit. So I'm going to leave it up in this beta view down here on the bottom left, and on the top I'm going to turn it down. So to do that, I'm going to go to Design. I'm going to choose my alpha view, and right here under ambient lighting, it's at 60%. You see, as I drag this down, I get less and less. So let's leave it at like 20-ish, somewhere in there. And I'm going to turn this one up a bit down here. Okay. So for my wash lights, it's helpful to have that darkness, kind of like in real life. It's helpful to have the darkness for the wash lights. And if I'm using a spot or an ERS fixture, it's a little bit easier to see as well. Okay, back to fixtures. So I've got channel 1. So once I have channel 1 selected, and I'm doing that just by clicking on it in my fixture list, if I right click anywhere on my screen, it's going to focus that light where I want it. So typically when I would do this, I would have a whole bunch. If I was trying to make this super duper accurate, I'd have a whole bunch of people. I'd have some people figurines in here. And actually, when I do, sometime in the next week, I'll do another stream with the motion capture where we'll map all of the scenic objects to motion control through DMX, and I'll add some dummy people in there as well that Dalton will use for focus palettes. But for now, I'm just gonna kind of get a look at it just by clicking and clicking and moving around. So I've got 1 done. I'm gonna move on to 2 here. I'm gonna go probably about right there with it. 3. And again, I know where all of these go just because I've worked in this space so much. If this was a new space, I would have to reference more paperwork or maybe be looking at the plot. One thing I'm noticing right away is just how big some of these are with the medium lens. So we'll get back to that in a second. This is one of those things that, although on the screen they look pretty big, I know from experience here that medium lens is what we want. And we'll probably end up throwing some barn doors on it as well. And actually, I could go ahead and do that. That's a good first test. So I've grabbed all 5 of my fixtures here. You can see I can change their color and their saturation. I've got that top system pretty much ready to go now. I can change their brightness. And now I'm going to go into my library, and I'm going to search for barn door. Is that? Can I not do that? I thought I could do that. Okay, I'll get back to that later. Let's move on with the fixtures for now. So next we have 6. I'm going to go ahead and turn some of these off so I can see a little bit better what I'm doing. So a question just came in. The purpose of using this program to give an idea of what it will look like in real life. Yeah, so right now, this is kind of part of my process where I'm seeing if what I've figured out is actually going to work in real life. When it comes to like what we're using this for in the actual theater, it's actually used more. We do all of our pre-programming this way. So there's a lot of time. Got it. Thank you, Mike. There's a lot of time in the space that we can't do anything with because audio is using it, or they're doing scenic load in, or other things are happening, and maybe our rig isn't even up necessarily while all this stuff is happening. So we use this in the rehearsal studio to be able to sit there and plan out, basically do pre-program as much of the show as possible so that when we get into the space, all we're doing is touching stuff up. We know because we've used the software so many times for these fixtures and in this space that we can kind of approximate pretty close to what we're doing. And this kind of goes into a larger conversation about programming philosophy and how we lay out our show files. We use a lot of presets, a lot of palettes. So for instance, if we have a downstage center position, obviously if we do it in capture with our moving lights, it's going to look one way. And in real life, it might be slightly different. Let's say we decide in the moment to fly that electric out another inch or 2. It's going to change. But if we have our entire show file based on those presets and palettes, all we have to do is update those things once, and it's updated throughout our whole show. So Mike Arnold just pointed out in the comments that barn doors are underneath the fixture information for those selected thing. Why don't I see that? That's where I thought, oh, external, right here. External accessory, barn door. So now if you notice when I have those, I've got some barn door flaps that I can adjust as well. So let me go back over here and turn those on. Bloop. And I'm going to do one at a time. And if I push in these doors, let me turn the other ones off so we can actually see what we're doing. All right, channel 1 is on. And as I start pushing in these barn door shutters, they're not actually manipulating this fixture. That's interesting. Very interesting. Okay, it's not important for today's purposes. Let's move on for now. Again, we're just getting it kind of close. So these next 3, these happen to be focused on top of this header unit up here. So to do that, I'm going to drag myself right above it. I'm going to move down, if you look at my bottom window here, and I'm going to actually focus them from this bottom, the beta view here, get them kind of close in there. There's 11. Here's 12. If you notice now, because this is a wide oval, the oval is the bottle is going the wrong way. I'm going to come back and fix that in a second. 13. Turn that one on. That one's pretty good. So I'm going to come back to 12 here. And what I'm going to do to fix it, I'm just going to spin the fixture around. I'm going to change this to a top view. So to do that, I can do Command 1, or I can come here and go swing to top. And you can see, let's see here, which fixture is it? It is channel 12. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a rotation. And then I'm going to focus it upstage a little. Whoop. There we go. That's pretty close. Those are probably used, I think, once in the show, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time getting them perfect. Question from Harrison. Do I use Capture as a full replacement to worksheeting, or does this supplement that? Do you mean, you mentioned beam draw, so when you say worksheeting, do you mean like figuring out photometrics and things like that and beam spread? If so, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It really depends on the space. If I'm doing a simple play or something like that, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time figuring that out within Capture, unless if the scenic designer has given me a model and I have a model of the space, sure. But if I'm doing a relatively simple show, I'm not gonna spend time with it. I really just do, I'll use the beam. I'll turn on the beam draws in Vectorworks sometimes, and a lot of it just comes down to kind of knowing at this point, and knowing like, all right, well, I'm this far away. I know it's going to be this. I know it's going to be that. Especially because I right now I seem to be working in a lot of the same venues over and over. So like I know that from this position in this performing arts center, I've got to have a 14 degree. You know what I mean? So. I will say what I have used it for, what I found myself using it for, is looking at gobos. So something I've kind of always struggled with since I was a kid or a high schooler starting in lighting, was trying to figure out what a gobo would actually look like on a stage compared to just what it looked like in the photo. So I've spent a lot of time, like I have a show file for Capture where there's just like an instrument, and I drop gobos into it and play with the focus just to kind of see what it looks like. Okay, let me do, I've got these 4 backlights. These are luster Fresnels here that are up on my toy stage area. This whole upper area is called the toy stage. Now the Fresnel has another slider control here that we haven't seen yet. This is the zoom, because just like a regular Fresnel, I can spot, or I can flood the unit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom them all the way in to start, just so I can get them in a nice straight line. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Kind of a nice little backwash there. And then I'll grab all 4 of them again, and I'm going to zoom them out just a little bit. So that's a nice backwash on that stage. And you can see again, I can play with the color. And all good to go. A couple other questions just came in. I'll get to those in 1 second. I'm going to do a few more fixtures here. Okay, so those have been pretty self-explanatory so far because they're all top light, backlight, easy stuff. So my next light is 31, and I'm not 100% sure what that does off the top of my head. So I'm going to go back in and look at my channel hookup again, and I see that's a side color fill, and it's got R132 in it. If I scroll over here, you can see I've already got some of these colors dropped in, and I will show you how to do that in 1 second. Go back to this window. So I've already got 132 in there. I've already got my lensing and everything done. And oh, my purpose is there as well. Okay. So in these systems, I've got, I think 3 per, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. Yes, I've got 3. These are kind of like a pipe end color fill system and the downstage ones fill in this, this apron area down here. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is the first one. I'm actually going to skip to the second one in this series, or in this system, because I want to start at the center, and I'm going to turn that on, and I'm going to bring it over here towards center. And then I'm going to go back to my first one. I'm going to turn it on, put it there-ish, and I'm going to take my third one and turn it, oh, that's the wrong, I don't want it to strobe. And I'm going to shoot it far. So if you look at these, in the screen here, I've got 36, 26, 19. So the 36 is obviously shooting close, the 26 is shooting mid, and the 19 is shooting far. Back to kind of Harrison's question earlier about figuring out photometrics and beam spreads and stuff with this. Sometimes I'm limited to what the theater has in inventory. So on this particular case, we're lucky. Like if we don't have enough of one lens, we just put it on the rental order. But there are some spaces where I'm kind of like, well, yeah, it would be nice to have a 36 here, but all I have left are 50s. And so it's making a judgment call over, all right, is it more important to use my 36s for my front light and then just go ahead and have a bigger template and do shutters, et cetera, et cetera. So a couple questions came in. Since I do a lot of pre-programming using Capture, how long do you guys get in the space to work before the show opens? That really depends on the show itself. So for Holiday Inn, which was the most recent show we did back in December with City Springs, we did about 2.5 days of pre-programming at the space, and then there were some scenic hiccups. So we didn't actually start working with lights on stage until I'd say probably about 3 days before opening, which is a short amount of time. This next one we have a little bit more time. I think we'll be going in on Sunday, hopefully with a fully programmed previs file for an opening on a Friday. Other shows, other venues, it varies. You know, I've done ones where it's like we're coming in with the capture file and we're doing as much as we can in advance, but we've got a couple of hours and then we're opening. And I've had other ones where we pre-program the whole thing and then we still have a whole week worth of tech. And so it's, again, like how much detail that I put into this really depends on the particular needs of that particular show. Another question came in about gobos. We're going to get to that in 1 second because I'm about to get to our first gobo system. And then another question, why the luster Fresnels over color source pars? This again came down to an inventory thing. I needed the color source pars in other places, and they have 8 luster Fresnels, and I didn't really have anywhere for them, so I said, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and throw them on this pipe and use them as backlight. So really that was the choice. It was driven by the inventory. Okay, so I've got my 3 lights here. I'm going to go ahead and move around just a little bit, and I'm going to move this view down to more of a point of view of the fixtures. So some of these things, I can save these views within Capture as well. If you click here on the 3 little lines and say store camera, you can store up to 5 different camera positions. Whoops, I just accidentally focused all of them, so I'm going to undo that. That's helpful if if you're always wanting to see into a wing, you can do that. You can do one for each one of your wings, however you want to set that up. One thing I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to change my field of view of this beta window down here. I want to see a little bit more of the stage. So to do that, I'm going to come into Design, Views, Beta View, and right now it's set to 45 degrees. I'm going to set it to 90 degrees. Now you can see it's kind of a ridiculous stretched out version, but now I can see everything that's happening there. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm about to do some shutter cuts. So I'm going to start with 31. I'm going to grab it. And if you look down here now, these little lines are my framing shutters. So I'm going to shutter this in, kind of do a little bit of an angled cut to bring it in onto the deck. I'm going to bring the upstage cut in a little bit off of the toy stage. God, I wish that I could focus lights this quickly in real life, right? One thing I have done in the past too, Capture does allow you to export focus, kind of like basically focus charts with focus images for all of these things. I've never used that functionality completely, but what I have done is, if I can't focus a rig and I have somebody else doing it, I've done like system photos where I've just done screen captures of everything so they can get an idea of what I wanted for those various things. I did that this past summer with Fun Home at American Stage in St. Pete. I had an old friend of mine focus that for me because I was actually in tech on another show. And when I got there, he had used all the photos and it was pretty much good. Okay, so I've got this nice little channel of light here, this kind of weird curved channel of light. I'm going to grab all 3 of them again, and I'm going to play with the focus a little bit. Whoops. 31, 2, 3. I'm going to play with the focus a little bit and see if I can't soften those edges a little. I've got 132 already in there, but, well, that's about as good as it's going to get. No matter what, I notice I've got a little bit of a dark spot here, so I'm going to touch some of this up. I'm going to move this guy up just a little bit. And again, like this is a nice part of the process because it also helps me find issues. Like I might put this in here and realize, wait a second, a 19 is not going to work there. That's going to be too small. Maybe something went wrong at some point, and it happens, especially if other people are drafting and things are going, you got all kinds of revisions floating around and stuff like that. So having this as a little extra step there is super nice to be able to help look for those issues before they come up. Okay, so 31 through 33 look pretty good. I'm going to turn those off. I can also, I keep using the slider, but there's a light on and off button here. And the reason I keep using the slider is because the light on and off thing, I guess it's not new anymore. It's been a couple of years now, but it didn't used to be there when I first started using the program. So, all right, I'm going to turn these two on. And these are also a crosswash. And these, I believe, are supposed to be... Yeah, these are on the second electric, so these are going to kind of fill in this area here on the toy stage. So it's a very narrow shot, and this is one of those things that once we get into the space, we might end up adjusting a little bit to make it something else. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and focus it like that. So I'm all over this toy stage, so I'm going to go ahead and shutter this off the header. And bring in the bottom a little bit. And in real life, this will be, I think, a little bit better than what it looks like right now. At least we hope, right? That's always the hope. Great. So that's going to be a pretty narrow channel of light, but it'll be pretty useful for that area. I'm going to grab those two again, and I'm going to play with the focus a little bit, get them a little softer. Wonderful. A question just came in from Natalie. How long have I been using Capture, and how did you learn it? So I used Capture, I think the first time I ever saw Capture was probably at like an ETC training back 5, 6, or 7 years ago. I don't know. But I started using it, I think my first time was in 2015, I think was my first time using it. And I bought the cheapest license. I think at the time was like $500 or something like that for a single universe. Maybe it was 2 universes. I don't really remember. But it was when I was doing my second year doing the American Stage in the Park show, which is one of my recurring projects that I do every year. And I just wanted to kind of see, because I felt like, hey, this could be a really useful tool for the park, because, we're outside, we don't have a lot of programming time. I want to see if we can use this. So I didn't use it necessarily for the show. I just started kind of playing with it a little bit, learning it here and there. And then over the years, that was kind of the project that I started really using it on. I used it. We started doing more and more previs work. I started doing some renderings for things like the first rehearsal. All the scenic department, everybody always has these, nice, beautiful pictures and models and stuff that they can show at the first rehearsal. And I was like, well, yeah, I can talk about what we're going to do, but I don't really have anything to show yet. Nobody cares about looking at the plot. But once I started to be able to do some quick renderings and stuff like that, that changed. So that was kind of cool. And then really, as far as learning it, I kind of learned it like I've learned almost every piece of software that I use. I've taught myself, which is why, sometimes there are certain things that I don't remember or don't know, but nobody remembers everything. And I also used it a lot. So when I was teaching at a private school in New York for about, was it 3 or 4 years, something like that. And I used it a lot there for lab work and for classroom work. So I had a little light lab set up, and I would have the students kind of do little projects. And it was a way that I could bring moving lights in and do things like that without actually having to bring in moving lights. I also, over the summer, I did some workshops at a summer camp, and did them all in Capture. Let all the kids kind of do their own thing in Capture. Why isn't this working? Oh, because I grabbed the wrong light. Undo. Okay. So again, those aren't super pretty there, but they're going to be good enough. Okay, so I'm moving on to 51, and if we go back to our channel hookup again here, we can look and see that channel 51 is the first of our template system. So this is GAM 579, which is one of my favorite gobos, kind of all-purpose, useful template. And that is in channels 51, looks like through 63. So it's 3 per side on my first electric here. It's these other three high side kind of pipe end units. So the way I'm going to get to that, let me go ahead and bring you back to my other screen here. I'm going to grab those lights. So I'm going to say 51 through 63. I'm going to go ahead and turn them on just so we can see this, and I'm just going to point them all towards the center. And then under my library here, I'm going to click on Gobos, and then I could go and find it under GAM, but under the filter box here, I'm just going to type in 579 and hit enter. And then I see I've got GAM 579. And all I have to do with those fixtures selected is click it, and I drag it over top. You'll see that the fixtures turn purple there. When I release my mouse, Now I've got that gobo inside of my light. So I can refocus them, I can do whatever. And these also, I think I already put R132 in them. So let me go ahead and get rid of that. Let me see if I did it first of all. Yeah, so I already have 132 in there, which means I'm not going to be able to get a sharp edge in capture. So I'm going to click on the little gear icon here, the properties or the menu options, and I'm going to hit remove filters and watch what happens to the gobo when I do that. Sharpened up a bit, right? So just for the purposes of this, I'm gonna focus them with them sharp, and then we'll go back in and drop in some 132. That's kind of my go-to template wash system, is to do a 132. If I need like a rep plot kind of thing, I'll do a 132 in it. Excuse me, I'll do a GAM 579 with a 132 in it. Especially I find that works really well in a rep plot, because if you want if particular show that you have coming into your venue wants a sharp focus, all you have to do is go through and pull all your frost. If they want a soft focus, you go in and drop all your frost. So it saves a lot of time. You don't have to worry about getting edges perfect and trying to go back and forth and make every single one of them match. So I highly recommend that for all of you students out there. Okay, so this I'm going to do kind of similar shutter cuts as we did with the other ones, just kind of bringing it in a little bit off the stage like that. And I also have fog turned on. Later on in this stream, I will show you how to do that, but you notice I can see my beams in this alpha view here. I have that on purposely just so it helps me line up things in real life, or excuse me, in real life, but also in the software here. I can also, of course, I can adjust my edge if I want to here, but I'm going to leave them sharp because we're dropping that 132. A question just came in. Do I normally do all the work in capture, or do I have assistants do it, or do we work on it together? I typically do the actual capture layout, just because I think I don't want to speak for them, but I don't know how much some of the people I work with use capture other than me. So we have never really sat down I've never really taught them hey, this is how this works, this is how this works. But I also just kind of like that this is part of my process, especially for these shows at this point. Because oftentimes, this show I did completely myself. I did the plot, I did all the drafting, I did everything. On Holiday Inn, Dalton did all of that. So we talked systems and stuff like that, but he did all the nitty-gritty work and did all the layout. So by being able to do the capture myself, it was me being able to really get familiar with it and be like, all right, this is going to work. This might not work. Let's adjust this. So yeah. Okay, so I've got those 6 lights roughly focused. I'm going to turn them back on. And now I want to put, I've got one of them is scraping my stage here. So I think that's probably this guy. Is it you? It is you. Well, I guess it's 2 of them are scraping my stage. You and you. There we go. You can also rotate, just like you can with a regular Source 4, you can rotate this whole shutter assembly if you want to, which is kind of cool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drop in 132 in all of these. And just like I did with the color, I'm going to do the exact same way. Only I'm going to click here under filters instead of gobos, search for 132, and we'll do Roscoe Lux, and watch what happens when I drop that 132 in. So my gobo got softer, and that's just a really nice breakup. I really like that. One thing I do wish about capture is that I could just, and maybe I can, and I'm just dumb and don't know, I wish that I could just click in the field and type in R132 and have it be that. When you're doing a whole rig, this one's pretty simple because most everything changes color, so there's very little gel in the show. But when I've done other theatrical projects where I've got 20 different colors or something like that, it gets a little tedious to have to go through. And to the best of my knowledge, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, there's no way for me to map that when I do my import as well. Because of course all that color information is already in the Vectorworks file. So it would be nice if that was already pre-mapped and I wouldn't have to do it. But at the end of the day, it only takes a few minutes. It's not the end of the world. Okay, so I'm going to grab all 6 of these again. I'm going to turn them off. And now I've got, looks like my next system is channel 71 through 76. So again, I'm going to go back to my channel hookup and I'm going to see what those are. This is a diagonal temp and it looks like a construction breakup, GAM 635. So for this, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and turn those on. It looks like I've already kind of put them at center. There's no gobo in them yet, and these ones do not have 132, so this is going to be a sharp gobo pattern. Go to gobos. I'm going to search for 635. And it's a GAM Construction A. And there we go. So the nice thing about this, again, like if I was just doing this and trying to figure out what gobos I wanted for the first time, I could do that. I could come in here and I could search for breakup instead, and I could come here and I could just kind of click and drag gobos in and just see what the different ones look like. And I've done that lots of times, again, because I have a very hard time visualizing what a gobo is going to do sometimes. One thing to note about that is if you do that, you do need to come in here and hit remove gobos between, because otherwise it'll keep layering those gobos on top of one another. There's been a few times where I've accidentally done that. And that's annoying. So question just came in. How long does a plot of this size typically take me to focus and capture? Not very much time. So yeah, again, like right now this is taking some time because I'm doing the live stream, but it's really not a lot of work. Part of that is because this plot is mostly moving lights. So I'm a little lucky there where, you know, I'm not going to focus. I'm not going to be focusing any moving lights today. I'll show you how they work. But I'd say under an hour, probably closer to a half hour. And there's some adjustments and stuff like that made once we get into the space as well. But for the most part, it doesn't take long. And it's nice to do it on my workstation at home here because I've got external monitors and all that kind of stuff. But I've also done it before with on my laptop in an airport or on a plane. Which people always seem to like look over my shoulder when I'm doing that, which is kind of fun. Okay, so I'm just doing some shutter cuts on these, and in real life we'll probably work to kind of rotate this. We can rotate this gobo. We'll probably try to get it so it has forms a normal or a regular pattern on the floor. Like we'll try to get these to line up in real life and stuff like that. But I'm not super worried about it for this. If I was doing like renderings for a client or something like that, I'd spend a lot more time trying to figure out, make it look nice and make all these things work. But we're using this as a tool. Again, it's not a marketing tool, it's a programming tool. So okay, I'm gonna leave that one spill over a little bit too. And these are Source 4 LED Series 2, but these are tungstens. So they're the tungsten LED. So they're not color changing. I can adjust the temperature a little bit. But for the most part, these are just a replacement for a regular Source 4. And this is kind of like hey, I've got some empty space on the pipe here. I don't really have anything coming in from that diagonal angle. Let's throw these in and see what they do. I do that a lot. It's very fortunate to be able to have the inventory in this space to be able to do that. Like I said, most of this rig, why aren't these turning off? That's weird. Most of this rig is LED. I think there are, I want to say 6 to 10 conventional sources in this show, and that's it. Even all of our LEDs even all of our moving lights are LED in this show. For the last one, we brought some Vipers in. But those of you who use Vipers know the stock gobo load kind of sucks in them for theater. I had wanted to do some custom loads for these, but we just couldn't fit it into the budget. So we ended up on this show, we're bringing in some Elation Picasso units, which I've used at this space a lot in the past. And I like them okay. There's some color tearing issues, especially when you start to zoom them really far and you have gobos and shutters and everything else. But they're LED and they run on 120 volts, so it means we don't have to have a PD in there. It means we don't have to do a whole bunch of stuff. So we've got a bunch of those in here. So the question came in, what space is this? This is in the Sandy Springs Performing Arts Center, which is in Sandy Springs, Georgia. It is about a half hour outside of Atlanta. I'm the resident lighting designer for the resident theater company there. So the venue is a performing arts space. They do rentals and everything else. And then the company I work for is City Springs Theater Company. And we do 5 big musical theater shows a year, as well as they have a conservatory program where they have students. I just realized I still had the channel hookup open. I'm sorry, everybody. They do conservatory program, they do master classes. So when the day after this show opens in a couple weeks, I'm actually doing a lighting master class. Unfortunately, it's only open to students. So if you're a student of any kind and you're in the Atlanta area, you're welcome to come out. It's going to be, I think, Saturday the 7th, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. I have it on my Instagram, but of course now my calendar is not loading. But anyway, I'm doing a master class, yes, on Saturday the 7th, kind of talking about the lighting for this show and lighting in general. Question came in, are we using all these in-house lights or from a rental house? So it's a mixture of both for this. Every light you've seen so far is all in-house. So the venue is very, 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 very well equipped. Tons of lusters, tons of LED tungstens, tons of moving lights. Most of these moving lights, there's some Sola theaters, some Sola 1000s, R2 washes, color source linears, color source pars, luster Fresnels, as well as some like Elation LED products as well. And then the only problem that I think that is in the inventory of the space is that there's not really a big moving light. So a lot of the stuff is great for, the overheads and, things like that. But none of those fixtures are good enough to throw on the balcony rail to do a portal fill or to do drop fills and things like that. So we typically bring in a package of rental moving lights to supplement a little bit. So on this particular show, we're bringing in 10 Elation Picassos. Usually it's around 10. I think we've had up to 16 before. We're also, if you look at the plot down here on the bottom or on the capture file, you can see there's 6 of these Picassos out at front of house. So we're adding a front of house truss in that doesn't exist to kind of get us a little bit more up on this little stage area. Okay, so moving on, I've got 101 through 109 next. These are the first lights in my show so far that actually have color. These are Lee 201, so this is my front fill. These are probably the least used fixtures in the show. Most of the light in this show all comes from other places. It doesn't actually, I very rarely turn these front lights on unless we absolutely have to. Oops, that's the wrong slider. And that's mostly because they spill out all over everything. So again, I'm going to start in the center with channel 103 here. That's my down center position. You can see this kind of sucks looking at this. I've got a glare on my screen right now too. 102. I'll tell you what I'm going to do to start this. Because I have that color in, I can't really see these. I'm going to grab all of them again. I'm going to remove the filters. There we go. Now I can see it. I had 132 in there, and I had the 201. So let me turn those back off. So yeah, if you are a student, like I said, in the Atlanta area, the Atlanta metro area, it's going to be that Saturday the 7th. I think it's only like $20 or something like that. It's not bad. It's a 2-hour workshop. I haven't really planned it yet. I'm going to be doing, I know I'm going to like do like an intro to like, hey, this is me, this is lighting, this is, this is how this all works. And then I'll talk specifically about the show, which hopefully you'll get a chance to see. I don't think that the show is not included as part of that admission, but there is a show that afternoon. And then there'll be a tour of the space as well. So we'll go up in the catwalks, you'll see the follow spots, you'll see the booth, see all that kind of stuff. One cool thing on this show, we are using Roby BMFLs, which are moving lights, for follow spots. In the couple of previous shows we've done there, we've used the BMFLs with the robotic controllers. So it was like a little, I think it's basically just a Raspberry Pi inside of there. But the operators would have a little robotic controller, and that would control their moving light. It wasn't quite in the budget for this one, so we have the BMFLs again, but they have the side-mounted, the manual versions of that. So they will have they'll have a little controller that they use. It's called a Light Master, and they'll be able to control their light. They'll still manually pan and tilt it. But the cool part about that is we have control over the color, over the edge, even over the maximum brightness from the console. So for those of you who follow me on Instagram, I have a paperwork program that I use that I've made based in FileMaker. And for the last show that we did at City Springs, we wrote some functionality into that software to automatically create a cue list for all of those things. So that was kind of cool. So basically, Abby can go through. Abby is my other associate on the show, and she handles basically everything follow spot related. She's able to go in and put all of her information into that program and click a couple of buttons, and then all that information gets dumped over to the EOS as a secondary queue list. So it saves a whole lot of programming time, and giving us the control over what the color is and stuff like that is also really cool. We can do things that, yeah, sure, a manual operator can do it, but with the tech time we have, we don't really get a whole lot of rehearsal time with our follow spot ops. So being able to do like a 0-second color change or, a 0-second edge snap to a soft or sharp without having to rehearse that is great. If we had a week or 2 or 3 weeks of tech, sure, do it manually, but we don't. We're hopefully going to have something similar to that in the park this year. We wanted to do the robo spots in the park, but the quote came in at basically more than our entire budget just for the robo spots. So that's not going to happen. Instead, we're hopefully going to do the manual versions like we're doing for this show. But we'll see. My goal this year in the park, and I guess I should announce this so I actually can be held accountable for it, is I want to try to do a lot of video documentation of the process for that. So in previous years, I've done some write-ups about that show. I've done some blog posts and stuff like that. But I really want to do like I don't know if it's a vlog or if it's a little like short film or something like that about it. I've been recording the process so far, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. So we'll see. Sorry, I've been rambling a lot, so thank you for sticking with me, folks. Okay, a couple more questions came in. Do you still let students shadow me during tech? Yeah, absolutely. So I love having students come in and watch the process. I think that, educational programs are great and you can learn a lot, but you really get the best education if you're seeing it happen in front of you. I don't do any kind of like unpaid internships or anything like that. So typically I like to, I call it an observership or something like that. And basically anybody is welcome to come out. We're not going to give you work to do because you're not getting paid for it. So if you are a student and you're interested in that, I can't have a whole bunch of people come out. Usually I can have 1 or 2 per show. But you're more than welcome. Feel free to reach out to me via email or on Instagram, and if we can work it out, then you're more than welcome to come watch and kind of see how it all works. And another question came in: do I have in-house spot ops, or do we find them, know them? So this show is a union show. So the venue that we're working in is not a union venue, but the theater company that we work for has a CBA with the IATSE local in Atlanta. And so we end up having a lot of the same follow spot operators, which is great because they know Abby, they have a good rapport, and they know kind of my style and Abby's style and what we want to do with it. We do have it seems like we have one new one on every show. Some of the shows we've had 3 operators, some of them we have 2, but we do have a lot of consistency, which is nice. So they come from the local union crew. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop my color back in these. So I've got Lee 201 is going in as my color. Which is obviously not that blue in real life. And then I'm going to drop 132 on top of that. R132. Bloop. And there's my front light. And again, there's a little bit of spillage there, but I'm not going to spend time fixing that right now. Okay, turn those off. Okay, next up, I've got 111 through 113 and 121 through 123. What are those? Oh, that's right. I added those in. That's new for this show. These are kind of like a box boom light. So they have some issues in the venue right now where we can't use some of the house box boom positions. And so because of that, we have some temporary pipes. So I don't have as much box boom light in this show as I normally would. So these are coming up I think from my upper catwalk. Yeah, they're all the way up here. And these are 10 degrees. And so these are 6 incandescent 10 degree source 4s with Lee 161 in them, which is one of my favorite cool blue fills. And these are just going to be basically what I just said, a blue fill. So I'm going to focus this all in on my stage here. And that... I find that it's helpful when you do these shutter cuts to not look at the shutters themselves, not look at the thing on the screen, but just watch the light instead. Because if you just watch what's happening on screen, it doesn't seem like it's... if you watch just the shutters, it doesn't seem like it's what it's actually supposed to look like, but it does. Okay, so I got that there. Grab all three, turn them off. And grab these three, turn them on. And again, this is a new system for this show, and it was really just like, hey, I've got some 10 degrees left. Let's throw them up there and see what they end up looking like. Okay, a new question came in. It says, I was just watching the Vectorworks and SketchUp live stream, and I mentioned to somebody about a Vectorworks training book. Do you recall what that is called? I'm not super familiar with any modern books as far as like ones that are recently written, but one that I used to teach with was this one right here. I reached over, it was on my shelf. I didn't have this pre-planned. It's called Light Plot Deconstructed by Greg Hilmar. I think this was this version. Yeah, this was in version 2010, but it's a really good reference on how to set up a Vectorworks file for a light plot from the beginning. I'm sure that there are newer books, and Greg probably has updated versions of that out there. I just haven't actually taught Vectorworks in a really long time, so I'm not really super up to date with what the best books are for it. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do these shutter cuts. Yeah, and if anybody has any recommendations for a newer, better book, throw them out in the live chat right now. But yeah, it's been something that's been requested a whole bunch of times when I ask people for ideas about live streams, is to like do a setup of a Vectorworks file, and I would love to do that. It would take a lot of time, so maybe one day I'll do that. I did do one a couple months ago, just like me working in Vectorworks because I was bored one day. Oh, I missed a shutter cut somewhere. Is that you? Oop, yep. One thing that I do wish Capture could do, I mentioned this in my other one, and I think it does do this with some consoles, so this is not a Capture issue. I think this is an ETC thing, is I wish that I could click on a light, or I could select a light within the EOS and have it selected in Capture as well, and kind of have bidirectional communication, which is I'm basically describing augmented at this point, where I can just, click on a light, click where it is, and those values go in. But it would be kind of handy here and there for certain things. The question came in, at this venue, do we use Socapex and do we have to use a PD? So yeah, there's a lot of Socapex. There are no dedicated electrics at all in the venue, other than obviously front of house where there's plugging strips and things like that. All of the overhead pipes can be used for basically whatever, other than some orchestra shells, which are pains in the ass and always seem to get in the way of anything we want to do. But all of the circuitry for all of the electrics comes from drops on the mid rails on stage left or stage right. So we've got all that's planned out by our production electrician in advance. We don't typically have to use a PD because the venue was designed to be a hybrid LED incandescent venue, which is really nice. So most everything there is... sorry, I'm rambling. Every module in the sensor rack is a through power module. So every single module is able to be switched between dim and non-dim. And so any circuit we want anywhere can become a non-dim. The times we've brought in a PD, one time we had, I talked to you earlier about how we've brought in some large moving lights in the past. One time we did VL4000s in there, and of course we had to have a PD for that. One time we did BMFLs, and we had to have a PD for that. And there are some issues with cable paths and stuff like that. And so it just kind of got to be a pain in the ass when it came to the PD situation. So that's why we've started kind of choosing lights that we can run on 120 volts and just run right off of the through power modules and not have to worry about a PD. This show there will be a PD because we've got this whole back thing here that you don't really see as a video wall. Almost the whole show is got an LED video background. So there's a PD for that. There's a lot of motors in this show, so there's a motor PD. And of course, the BMFLs we're using for follow spots do have to have 208. So there are some 208 circuits available. up in the follow spot booth actually. So we run those out to wherever we need them, but there's no disconnect out on the catwalks. There's one on the grid, which is great for motors and stuff, but there's not on the catwalks where, so there's some problems with the venue there, but we've worked around them. Oops, 141. So right now I've got a box boom luster system that I'm focusing in here. Like that. Yeah, 143 at the bottom. And is that oh, not that one. 142 maybe? There we go. That's a little better. So I've got 6 lights that are lusters that are a box boom fill. Play with some color here. Oops, saturation. Great. So those work. Oh, I missed one. 143. Turn you off. Okay, chugging along now. All right, next up I've got starting with 201. So let's go back to our channel hookup here. I'm just going to drag it on the screen instead of doing it the other way. So 201, so these are my shins. I've got 4 per side. So these are the things that take a little bit of time to actually go in and do because of the nature of how they're focused. So I'm going to turn them all on. And right now they are all kind of they were pointed straight down. So I'm actually going to change views here a bit. I'm going to move this bottom camera to be a straight on view, and I'm going to move my big screen over here to be more of a point of view of the fixtures kind of situation. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to grab my first one, 201. I'm just right clicking to kind of set a center point on it. And I'm going to come in from there and I'm going to work with my shutters. So the shutters are not backwards in capture like they would be in real life, which is kind of nice. Typically for my shin light, I focus it off the floor. So I'll center it and I'll focus it to the bottom legs on the opposite side of the stage. I'll cut that off the toy stage for now. And I'm just going to leave the top. I'm going to leave the top open in capture. Probably won't in real life, but for now it's good. So I'm going to kind of move into my next wing here, which is fun to be able to do. Excuse me. Let me get a drink real quick. Question just came in. Do I have any training resources for SketchUp? So SketchUp, I actually, again, I kind of taught myself through online tutorials. When I was teaching at that school in New York, I was doing a lot of scenic design, and I wanted to just draft things quickly and didn't feel like dealing with all this 3D stuff in Vectorworks. So I taught myself SketchUp. And what I used to do that was the online Lynda learning classes. So I'm very fortunate as a member of USA 829, and I believe any member of IATSE can get this now. You get access to all of the Lynda, which I guess is now LinkedIn, all of the training materials and stuff like that for free through IATSE. And so I did a couple of, like 20-hour online tutorial classes and picked it up from there. But a lot of it was honestly like, I'd get sent SketchUp files from scenic designers and I'd have to figure out how to fix them. So I'm not going to call anybody particularly out on that. But kind of a lot of that, a lot of playing around and a lot of just like, okay, I know I need to accomplish X, so let me figure out how to do that kind of situations. And I've got a side light here on the toy stage. So this is actually a situation where I can't really see what's going on back here. So I'm going to turn up my ambient light in my alpha view a little bit. That didn't really help. I'm going to leave it down. I'll just get it as close as I can. Something like maybe right there. And off the floor. Good enough for now. I just lost my train of thought. I was going to say something else about that training stuff, but I forgot. Okay, so now I'm at a point where, okay, I've got my camera over here on this side. I know my next light, 205, is going to be the shin on the far side, but rather than jumping back and forth, I'm going to skip ahead to my next system. So 201 was my shin. I know 211 is going to be my downstage head fixture. So I'm going to do that one first, and then I'm going to come back to my others. So I'm going to turn off 201 through 205 and turn on 211. And again, like, I'm not making this super duper precise, but I'm getting it as close as I can. And I think with the mids, I'm also going to bring them up off the floor. And leave the top mostly open. Come in off the toy stage. 212. Another question. What fixture types do I typically use in side light? Depends on the show. Depends on the venue. So on this one, all of them, these are all lusters, and then there's a color source par on the head, which chances are will not be super useful except for like big bright washes. But I had a handful of extra color source pars, so I said, you know what, let's throw them on there. For Holiday Inn, I had Vipers on the ladders, and those ended up being they really came in clutch for us on a lot of stuff. But everything you're seeing right now is a luster on the side, which is super great because I can make anything I want, any color I want for the most part. And even though I have all of that nice flexibility and freedom, there are still times where I'll turn on one of the conventional systems and then get frustrated that I can't change the color of it. This will be our 8th show with this company and in this venue. So at this point, like, a lot of this is kind of down to a science, and it's nice too because we get a lot of the same electricians, so they know how things are focused. They know, that we use similar systems on every single show, so that they know, and that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. We haven't done this apron truss thing in a few shows now, mostly because of budget, but I was able to get it back in for this, and I'm super duper excited about it because it makes a world of difference. Okay, so those were the shins and the mids, and now I'm going to do my 5 heads on this side. And again, I'm a little skeptical that these are going to, see, like, even in capture, I can tell how much spill that's going to be. But it's fine for now. I'm just going to turn it on and focus it. You don't like pars spilling all over your walls? I love the color source pars for certain things, but there are times where, like, I used to use them. I tried them as high sides at one point. I tried them as pipe ends. We'd put them on the ladders, and I just couldn't really control the spill in a way that I wanted to. So now I use them as top light. I use them as footlight a few times in this space. And don't get me wrong, I love them, and they do some great stuff. But so Natalie just asked, do I prefer almost all intelligent units, or do I like a mix? Unfortunately, I don't really get that choice very often. I think, if you're asking me, of course, I'm going to want, I want everything to change color. I want everything to be able to do anything I want it to do. But that's just realistically never going to happen in most spaces that I work in, just because of budgets and because of inventories and stuff like that. This space, I'm very lucky because we have a really, really great inventory to work with. And a lot of venues have similar stuff, but they might have 10 LEDs and everything else is conventional. So when that happens, it's just it's a game of figuring out how to best use the tools that you have for any given project. Okay, so I moved myself into the other wing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my next set here. Oh, that's what I was going to mention. So I'm moving the camera around, using my mouse and stuff with this. But you're also able within Capture to map your camera to DMX channels. So we've got some custom EOS profiles that we've built where we can control everything from the pan, the tilt, even the exposure level of our camera. And so in theory, like, you could record those into a cue list and, do a full-on animation of your stuff moving around, which is pretty cool. We usually have 2 or 3 views, and then we just park them on the console, or we put them in a cue list and kind of alternate between them. So that's kind of cool. And on my next stream, when I do the motion capture stuff, I'll show you how to set that up as well. Red cube. What do you mean by... Oh, the red cube on the screen. So the red cube on the screen is just showing me what fixture I currently have selected. So as I click on different ones, you see that the current fixture selection is outlined in red in my live view, so I know what I'm working with at any given time. I'm actually going to Atlanta tomorrow for a site visit for this. We have a new production manager. new stage manager. So I'm going down to kind of meet with them and the venue and kind of do a walkthrough of everything. And so I've got a flight boards at 4:30 a.m. tomorrow, and then I fly back again at midnight. So that'll be a really fun day for me. But I get to go to the first rehearsal too, which is not something I get to do very often in most of the places I work. So that'll be fun. Okay, and rather than moving the whole camera again, I'm just going to start with 218. Oh, did it again. I turned the shutter on instead of the... Why can't I see you? Light? There it is. Great. So any other questions about the design or the process or anything? I realized that just kind of sitting watching focus fixtures is kind of boring. So I'm trying to make it as interesting as possible. Hopefully somebody's enjoying it. Coming up in the next few months, I've been kind of enjoying some time off in the last, really since mid-December. I've had no shows for the first time in a long time. Usually I've got a January project to work on. But it's been really nice. I've been like doing stuff around the house and catching up on all kinds of like other projects that I want to do and getting ready for these shows, but then get really busy again very soon. So as soon as I go to do this show, it's kind of nonstop. We're doing, I don't know what that green flash that just came across the screen was. As soon as we go off to do this show, it's kind of nonstop for the next few months. We're here, and then we do, Dalton and I will be doing a production of Matilda with Hits Youth Theater in Houston, which will be a lot of fun. Hits is it's all kids, and they perform at the Miller Outdoor Theater, which is like a 4,000 seat outdoor venue, which it's really cool because the theater itself is like the Fly House is all like a normal theater that you'd normally be in, and then it just happens to open up to the outside. So I'll definitely post some videos from there as well. And then after that, we fly to Florida, and Abby joins us at Blake School of the Arts again, so another educational project that I'm working on. Blake is the school I actually used to teach at 10 years ago. It's actually where I met Abby. Abby, who's like one of my normal associates now. She was a costume design student, and I forced her to call follow spots for a production of Chorus Line that we did her sophomore year of high school, and now she is stuck in this business for good. She went on to North Carolina School of the Arts and is now the lighting supervisor for the second company for Alvin Ailey. So I'm very proud of her, and it's really cool to be able to work with her so often. So anyway, so we do that project, and then we're right into Tech on the Park, down at American Stage in the Park down in Florida. And then as soon as that is done, we are right back at City Springs to do Sister Act. A couple other questions just came in. How long before coming into the space for Tech is your plot other paperwork due? It really depends on the theater company. So City Springs, it's kind of a ongoing, ever-evolving situation, so we're part of the whole process from the beginning. So the plot is being morphed and changed really up until load-in. Other spaces that are, I don't want to say more traditional, but if I'm doing a simple play at a theater that does plays all the time, usually it's due anywhere from a week to 2 weeks before the load-in date. And then typically, again, depending on the theater, the load-in will happen. I'll usually come in a couple of days after the load-in for a focus, and then we go into Tech. But it really depends on the where we are. To do another question. Other tools or resources that have been beneficial as a lighting designer. There's all kinds of stuff. So I recently just wrote a blog post. I'll do a quick little shameless plug for that. Sorry, I have a hard time typing and talking at the same time. On my website, if you go to mikewoodld.com/blog, I recently wrote a post about some non-lighting resources that I use all the time. I called it Essential Workflow Tools. So if you go to Essential Workflow Tools, I kind of outline my time tracking software that I use in there. I talk about QuickBooks, which is what I use for all of my invoicing and expense tracking. I talk about some like mail filters and other workflow tools like that I use, and how I use Dropbox and Google Drive. And then, so I've got that. And then also on my blog, I have a handful of other things like Stamp is a program I use. There's a whole thing on that. Before questions were a thing on Instagram, I used to gather questions and then post them on the blog. So there's two things there that are full of information, especially for students. So that's like kind of like my target demographic for a lot of the content that I'm creating and things that I'm doing is for students at any level. So a lot of what I write, a lot of things like that are geared towards early career designers or people who are in school or fresh out of school. Hopefully other people get something from it too, but that's kind of been my target there. So all that stuff is on my website. Shameless plug there. Let's jump back into Capture. Let me get rid of my image from the screen so you don't have to look at me. Bloop. Okay. So where did I leave off? I finished all my booms. That went pretty quickly, and now I'm on to my ladders. So I've got in this show, let me zoom this plot around here. I've got 3 ladders deep, and I've also got some units that are hanging out on the top of my dance towers downstage here. So let's just jump in with those real quick. And again, on this, I've got 3 of them going across. Where am I at? I'm lost. Well, let's turn some light on, Mike. That'll help you find it. Oh, I'm backstage. Huh. Okay. And again, the better way to do that is if I would have stored this camera and I could have gone and done that way. But I'm not known for doing things the right way. So, okay. Here we are. There's that. 232. Turn you on. So now this is something right away that I've noticed. These lenses are way too big. So I've got 336s in a row there, and that definitely seems like a mistake. And I think this is going to be a mistake that makes some people happy because I had to rent some 36-degree lenses. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to double check that that's indeed what they're supposed to be and I didn't make a mistake. So 231. Yep, they're listed as 36s. So great. Yay, we found a problem. In Capture here, I'm going to change this and see what looks better. So what if we go to a 26 in the middle? How's that? That's a little better. And do we need a 19 for the far shot? I'm thinking maybe. Oh yeah, that's much better. Okay, so that was a great example of why this is super useful. And that, just kind of happens in the process sometimes where I'm doing it quickly, and that was probably a copy paste and said, all right, well, yeah, obviously this needs to be a 36, and I didn't really spend the time figuring it out because I'm generally pretty irresponsible. So that means I was able to eliminate 2 36s. So I'm going to write that down. So far 2, and I have a feeling we'll be able to eliminate some more pretty soon here. Oh, and I also, if we come back here to this for a second, we notice these have gobos that get them. This is another cross temp system. So this is channels 231 through 262. All of those all have GAM 579 in them. So 231 through 262, library, gobos, 579, GAM, and I'm going to drop it. Boom, right there. Okay. So now I'm going to knock these out pretty quick. Looks like, so yeah, look at this. If you look at the other ones here, these I had 36 and 26, 19. So it was just a copy paste error. And who knows when that happened. That probably happened at some point a long time ago, and it is just now getting caught. So, excuse me. It would be kind of cool in Capture if you had a focus mode, so I could click on the fixture and it would automatically turn on. It would save me a couple of clicks, which would be nice. So you can see very quickly here, like this entire gobo system, how quickly I can lay it out on my on my stage. And I'm not going to, just for simplicity's sake and to not waste anybody's time today, I'm not going to go through and do all of these perfect shutter cuts on this one, because that's not riveting television. So I'll do that probably realistically once we get into the space. But for now, I'm just going to rough them in here for y'all. Well, I just said y'all. I've been living in Tennessee for 8 months now, and I just said y'all. Okay. It's all right. I'm from outside of Tampa, very country area, so I'm allowed to say it, I think, right? Okay. So now I've got my full stage template wash. One thing I've noticed right away is I've got a little bit of a dark spot on my toy stage here, but I think I can fix that with my upstage ladders. I'll kind of focus them downstage a little bit and fill that in a bit. A question just came in. Do you choose who your assistants and associates are for each show? Do I try to stay consistent, or do we switch it up sometimes? I try to stay as consistent as I can. I've got a group of people that I use a lot. You know, Dalton and Abby are kind of my go-tos right now, but there's times where they're not available. So I love working with Dalton because he and our minds work very similarly, and so, you know, if I do any kind of vlog or anything from the show side of this, you'll kind of see how that works, where a lot of the process is we're designing the show together. It's really all three of us doing it, because of the timeline and everything else. But I do have some other people that I use frequently. It really just depends on the show and who's available. The first show this season, Dalton and Abby both weren't available, so I had a new team for that. But again, I had one new person, and I had another person that I've worked with a whole bunch over the years. I do try to have some consistency though, because it's hard to come in with a brand new team on a show and try to make it happen in a tight time frame like that without any kind of familiarity with each other. It's also, we just have a good time together. I've known Abby again since she was like 14 years old in high school. So like we know each other really well. We work together really well. Dalton too. I actually met Dalton when he was a senior in high school, when Abby was a senior, and they were both at the Florida Theater Conference together. Sorry, they might be angry at me for telling this, but I don't care. And he was exhibiting, and I met him for the first time there. So that was kind of fun. If you missed it, I just changed a couple of lenses again because I had two other 36s on that other side. So production management's going to be happy. I just cut 4 lenses off the rental order. That's not a lot of money, but saves a little bit. It's better than the alternative. It's better than me being like, hey, I need 20 more of this. You know what I just realized I haven't done in this entire stream, and that's to save what I've done. So I'm going to go ahead and click save, and hopefully it doesn't crash or anything. Great. Capture does not have any kind of autosave feature, which it needs. To be fair, I have not really had any major crashing issues with Capture. I've had it crash maybe once or twice, but I've been very lucky, I guess, where I've never had anything majorly go wrong. All right, I think this is a mistake. 257 is a 36. That doesn't seem right, does it? The top unit is a 36. 57, 58. Gonna have to double check some paperwork on this. I think I got some channel numbers wrong on here, but the fixtures will still be focused even if they're... Yeah, I think these 3 are backwards, but that's something that we can fix and patch later on. Okay. And a couple more. Oh, these are upstage. Okay, let me spin us around here. I feel like these upstage ladders are going to get a whole lot of work in this show, because a lot of the show takes place up on top of this little false stage thing. So yeah, see, these also I messed up the channel numbers on, so I'm going to write that down. That's the stage left in 2 and 3 ladders. And basically what I did there is the top units and the bottom units have their channel numbers swapped, so I need to fix that. But I'm not going to worry about that for right now. Okay. Great. 271 is next. Question just came in. Is it usually mandatory for LDs or designers in general to stay for opening night? No, I've never had a contract where it's been required for me to stay at opening night. There's always parties and stuff like that. Depending on the season, sometimes opening, I try to leave as quickly as possible because I've got to get to another show. So typically, I will try to leave before opening night. There's also just like the artistic side of it is like, okay, well, opening night means I can't change anything else, so I don't really want to be there anymore because I'll be sitting there like, oh, I wish I could make this adjustment, or I wish I could make that adjustment. But other ones I'll stay. It depends. It really depends on the group that I'm with and stuff like that. There's been projects where I'm like, oh, I got to get out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. But those don't happen very often anymore, which is nice. Oh, look at that. I can save another couple of 36-degree lenses. So this is going to become a 26. This is going to become a 19. Okay, 26. And these guys here are color fills. So these are just lusters that fill in color. And again, I'm not making these shutter cuts perfect for now. I'm just getting them off my portals and stuff. I was trying to keep this under an hour, and we're going on an hour and a half. So thank you for those of you who have stuck it out. After another question coming after a longer run, do you come in a couple weeks in to make sure it's the same? No, I don't. I mean, I'm trusting that everything is good. I have not had any shows in my career where that's really been a necessity. I think my longest runs have been 5 or 6 months. And I've gone back to see those shows just to see them. But if that were to happen, I would probably try to either send somebody or I would probably try to just send somebody to do it instead. But I just rely on the board op. I rely on the stage manager to make sure things are still running smoothly. Yeah, I actually haven't had a long running show in a long time. Most of the projects I'm working on now are some of them go about a month and a half or so, but most of them are just a couple of weeks worth of a run. All the City Spring shows, like for the size of the rig you're seeing, like this show only will run for 2 weeks. So I think they do like 10 performances over 2 weeks or something like that. So it's a hell of a lot of work for those 2 weeks, but it's worth it because they sell out. So okay, 281 is next. I saved 4 more. That's 8 36-degree lenses I can get rid of. That's awesome. Okay. But now I got to go through and make sure that I have enough 19s and 26s to cover it. Another question just came in. Is this live stream going to be available to watch later? It absolutely is. All of the live streams that I do, unless they're a train wreck, which has not happened yet, knock on wood, basically the same link you're at right now, it will be the video. It usually takes an hour or so, I think, for YouTube to process it. Sometimes it's a little faster. But it will be available for you to watch and reference. One of my things I really want to do is go through. Number one, I want to caption these videos, but that sounds terrible because of how much I ramble. But I want to make them more accessible. So I might do that on like Amazon or have Mechanical Turk do that for me or something like that. But I really want to try to make them a little more accessible. And I also want to do some summaries because I know there's a lot of useful information in these, but because of the nature of it being a live stream, it's kind of like it comes at you. Oh geez, I made these backwards too. It comes at you pretty quick. And so being able to kind of index it and be like, hey, if you're interested in this topic, scroll to this part of the video, this part of the video. So maybe one day when I have a few days of downtime, I'll do that. But for now, the accessibility thing is something I want to work on right away. I just haven't gotten a chance to yet. Okay. So ladders, I believe, are done. What are all these? Oh, okay. So on this show, so far I've been referencing this thing we were calling the toy stage that you've seen. There's actually lighting fixtures up underneath of that header as well, which are not showing up for some reason. Where are they? Oh, there they are. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do Command 3 down here in this bottom one. And I'm going to look, I've got these fixtures right here. These are all inside of this toy header, and they actually are a little bit too low. So I'm going to just marquee select them, and I'm going to move them up just a little bit, like so. This is the first time I've been doing a show and capture with a bunch of lights that are inside of the scenery, so this will be a new fun thing for me. Where am I at? I'm lost again. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to go camera, swing to front. There I am. Okay. All right, so these are kind of like a high side fill here. 301, 302. 303. That goes about right there. So these are probably going to get a hell of a lot of use as well. And these are actually probably going to get a hell of a lot of diffusion as well because they are so close to the actors. Question came in. Do you know what kind of board you will be using for this show? Yeah, so this is programmed on a Geo, which is, of course, in the EOS family. I'd say, well, I won't even say 99%. 100% of the theater work that I do is on an EOS family console. Typically on, seems like most of the theaters I work in have an Ion, or a Geo. We'll be using an EOS TI for Hairspray with Blake School of the Arts later this year. We'll also use a TI on Matilda in Houston. That'll be a TI as well. Okay, so I've got 4 front lights here that are underneath the thing. These are going to be interesting because, again, we've got that LED wall. There was a conversation at one point about making this LED wall an RP screen, and I fought back on that as hard as I could because like it's going to be hard with the amount of action that happens on that stage to be able to keep light off of that wall completely. Like you see right now, I'm spilling all over it. That won't actually be that way in real life, but doing an RP would have been terrible for that. So being able to have this is great. All right, so I've got 3 color source linears underneath here. Now this is another way to focus these. So if I right click right now, the light, see what they did here? They all kind of, because they're linears, their center focal point kind of goes all over the place. So instead of right clicking to drag, I want to keep them in a line. So I'm just going to rotate the actual fixtures and put them, let's say, about right there. And those will probably have some diffusion on them as well. And those will be a nice little top light underneath that whole stage. And we are almost done, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, 351 through 353 are next. This is a ground row, and you can see these are pointed straight down by default right now, so I'm going to give those a spin, have them pointed up, and these are uplight on that Austrian drape that you see there, so they're probably actually in real life sitting about right there, and they'll probably end up being red for most of the show because the drop is red, so it's a very expensive uplight on a drape. But again, like we have them in inventory, and so that's what we're going to use. And I've got 2 more of them down on the floor. And again, by default, they're pointed straight down. So I'm going to flip those around and up. So when I say by default, they're pointed straight down, that's because I didn't assign a focus position within Vectorworks. A focus point within Vectorworks. So if you go in Vectorworks and you lay out focus points and you assign your lights to the focus points, the import you do from Vectorworks will actually contain all of that information. So the lights will be pointed roughly in the right locations already. And that's something I do ask sometimes, like when Dalton has made some of the plots in the past, is to put that in. If I know that I'm going to be really busy and I won't have a lot of time to make the capture file, I'm able to do a lot more if it's already roughed in, and I don't have to do it all from scratch. So, a question was, which LED wall are y'all going to be using? Oh God, everybody keeps asking me for questions on the LED wall, and I am not a video guy, but I will tell you. I'll pull it up in a bit. We've got Lorenzo is our video tech on this show, and he would be able to answer all those questions better, but I will find them and let you know. Okay, next I've got 4 fixtures way out here on my balcony. These fixtures are my, typically we use them for show portals. For this particular show, I'm going to use them on the toy stage to kind of fill in that. Something I'm working on this week, I'm going to add a few more things to this plot. Sorry, everybody who has already started working on it. But I want to try to fill in these actual dark headers a little bit, but I don't know for sure that I want to do that. So we'll see. More to come on that later. So these are basically, I'm going to do them one at a time. These are on the balcony rail, and they're going to come in low here, and they're going to... Actually, it looks like they could be a little bit smaller, doesn't it? These could probably go down to be a 19. Might actually be able to go down to a 14. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. 401 is becoming a 14. And I'm going to shutter that. So these are really tight shutter cuts. And these will probably end up getting a gobo in them as well. But we just really have to kind of see it in the space and see how it feels when we get out there. So that one goes on that wall. That'll be 401. Do 404 next. 404 will also become a 14 degree. And so this is one of those things that, like, if we were focusing, if I didn't have this capture tool in front of me, we would probably make that lens swap during focus, which would take, 5 minutes for somebody to go get the lens from storage and to bring it up, take the old one out, maybe even longer depending on who the particular stagehand is. But I was just able in that little bit of time to realize that we could make a better choice and save that time. And that time really adds up over the course of things. So that's been super great. Okay, 402 will be next. I'm going to turn that one on. This will be on my header. And what I'm noticing here, yeah, that probably, well, let me play with it. Let me make it a 19 and see if it gets to be too small. No, I think that could probably be a 19. And of course, if you don't know what those numbers mean, if you're super new to lighting, the number is basically, it's the beam spread of the fixture. So when I say 19 degrees, the cone of light that you see coming out of the front of that light is 19 degrees. And so I can put different lenses in it to make them different sizes to help fill in the space a little bit better. The challenge here is that, of course, you've got the same amount of lumens coming out of the fixture no matter what size lens it is, or excuse me, the same amount of wattage basically coming out. So the brightness on the stage is going to be different depending on what size lens you have in it. So it behooves you to have the smaller lens as small as you can get it, because it's going to get you more brightness than it would if it was a wider lens. Okay, so I've got you. You're currently a 26. You could probably also become a 19. So this is 402 and 403 became 19s. And will you go on the floor? Yeah. So one of the things about this, typically, like if you're doing something like this, you wouldn't shutter one of these down to the floor like this, like the unit on the floor, because people are going to be standing in front of it. But because most of the show takes place up on top of that stage, I think I'm going to be able to use this a lot more, and I'll be able to tone, again, there'll be a texture in these probably eventually, but I'll be able to tone that stage a little bit more using these. So if I grab all four of them. Now, one thing I did notice is I'm missing this header thing up top. Let me play with this shutter cut a little bit and see if I can make that better. I think I'm going to do that with a separate fixture. So I need to add a fixture to the balcony that's just going to fill in that header. Write that down. 405 we're going to add, and that'll be a top header. So that'll fill in that little detail up top there. And so now again, I can come in here, and these are lusters, so I can change the color. I'll be able to do all kinds of cool stuff with those. Okay. Next, we've got 11 and 12. So these are up in my catwalk. These are specials on these little gargoyle units here. So I've got 411 here and 412 here. These are 14s right now. These could definitely go down to 5 or 10s, but I'm going to leave them as 14s just so we can get them a little bit sharper. If you've dealt with 5s and 10s, you know it can be hard to get like a perfect sharp on there. And then, of course, like, if the wind rustles too much, your 5 degree is going to move. So I'm just going to leave them as 14s. Because these are never going to be super bright anyway. They're just literally going to be little highlights on these statues. And I'll probably put frost in them in real life, but for now I'm just going to blur that out a little bit. Same thing here. I'm going to center it on this statue. Boop. Bring you in and bring you in. And I'm going to run the focus a little bit. Great. So now, like, if I start playing with those, if I bring on my lusters, turn the lusters on, play with the color on those, like, you can see really quickly how cool this could be. This little guy up top, this little scenic detail, whoops, that's also an LED light box. So I could actually map that within Capture. I could make that a color changing thing, but again, it's not worth it for this. And I am going to add, in the next revision of the plot, I'm going to add another fixture that fills in on these details up top here, because those are pretty and I don't want to lose those. Question just came in. Do you have sizes smaller that we're using? Yes. So we've got pretty much the full range of Source 4 lenses up to 50 degrees. We don't have any 70s or 90s in this space, but we've got 5s and 10s. Like I said, I'm not using a 5 or a 10 on this just because I want to be able to get it a little bit tighter and a little bit sharper. And I don't want a lot of spillage coming out of it. And they don't really have, the venue doesn't have barn doors, or excuse me, not barn doors. They don't have the big top hats for the 5s and the 10s or anything like that. So, yeah. Okay, so this next section you see here, these are all moving lights. I'm going to skip over those for right now and look for any other conventionals. I've got 6 right here. Excuse me. These are to be determined specials. So these don't actually do anything right now. I'm going to focus them all right down center. I highly recommend, no matter where you're working, if you're designing a plot, especially for musical theater, 100% for musical theater, and it comes in really handy if you don't have moving lights. If you've got stuff left over in your inventory, add some specials to the plot, even if you don't have a purpose for them yet, because it's a lot easier to go in and refocus something that you already have in the air than it is to have to go in and add and have your electrician recircuit and everything else. I typically try to have at least 4 or 5 specials up in the air no matter what. So yeah. Okay, it looks like I only have a few more units here to focus. I've got my Congo fill system. Which will probably can't really see it here, but I'm just going to do a rough focus on these. So I have a Congo fill that comes in from the balcony rail that is for 10 degrees, and then it also fills in a little bit from a house ladder position with some Source 4 pars. And because you don't see these in Capture very much, I don't even really spend time shuttering them. Turn all those on, and all towards the stage. So the Congo fill, this is you'll start noticing this more and more if you haven't used it. A Congo fill I use Lee 71, which is a really, really deep indigo. A lot of people use R59 or Lee 181. I don't really like Lee 181 because I think it has too much red in it. But I love Lee 71. And what it does is it basically makes colors in your costumes and your scenery pop out a little bit more. So it's the wavelengths are that really deep indigo, and so it almost kind of looks like a UV kind of thing. So especially if you have if you have a bunch of fluorescent costumes on stage or some really bright colors, you could have an entirely bright stage wash on, but once you hit it with that extra little bit of indigo, it's going to make those colors a little more vibrant, a little more brilliant. One thing to keep in mind if you are using that is that gel will burn through on a long run. So getting a dichroic glass filter for it instead is great, or using heat shield or using a color extender is the way to go. All right, I have a single conventional fixture left. That's my conductor light, which conductor is right. Where's my pit? I can't find my pit. There's my pit. Again, it's not really necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to delete that light from this because we don't need to previs the conductor light. So that's the conventional rig. That's everything. So we made some lens swaps. I saved a little bit of money, which was a nice discovery. And real quick, because I promised I would, let me show you how the moving light stuff works. So obviously everything in here says unpatched right now. If I had them patched, I could turn them on from the Ion over my network here. I've got in my house, I have a ETC Net3 VLAN set up so that I have lighting traffic separated from my regular traffic. But I can click, and these are moving lights. I can click them, put them anywhere I want. I can put the gobos in. I can do all this manually. All the ones I'm working with you see right now, these are all Solospot 1000s. These are all in the house inventory. So those are great. I can change the color, turn them on, turn them off. I've got a system of R2 washes that are our top lights. That's these guys here. And these, of course, we've got zoom and pan and tilt. So this is super helpful. Like Dalton can come in here. Boom, there's our downstage center position. Now with augmented, I can do that and also save the position right to the EOS. That's what I was saying before. I wish that there was some kind of bi-directional communication with capture and EOS as well, so that I could do the same thing. But really, when we're using capture in the previs room, we're using it like we'd be looking at the stage. All right, so take those all home, turn them off. I've got my Picassos next. So these 6, these are this is going to probably be the workhorses of the show. So these, you can see, I'm going to be able to hit this whole stage in there. These are an apron truss position. So it's a temporary truss that we hang from motors out over the orchestra pit. And these, they have shutters. They've got all kinds of gobos. And yeah, they're going to be wonderful out there. We use them in the same position for Billy Elliot. Which I loved. I was really happy with the way Billy Elliot ended up looking, and I think that having these fixtures was a direct part of that, because it just the angle is awesome. So there's those 6. I'll turn those off. I've got 2 here. These are kind of in low. Where are these at? These are in the low box boom positions. So these, if you look out here on the section view, these are kind of out here in space. Again, because of some problems with the venue pipes, we can't use a lot of the box boom position. So these kind of become a workhorse for that. So instead of having to have 2 or 3 different systems, now I just have a single moving light there. And it really, like, especially when you're doing a shorter run like this, you kind of can do the cost benefit analysis of it, of like, all right, if we hung, if we added 3 hours to the focus call and we had to pay 8 electricians for those 3 hours to focus all these lights and blah, 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 there's a dollar value associated with that versus, okay, maybe it's a couple $100 for these lights for the 2 weeks. So it becomes worth it to have those fixtures there, and it's an easier sell. Obviously, that's so highly dependent on the situation that you're in and the place you're in, your budget. But we've got 6 Soloframe theaters. I am indifferent towards the Soloframe theater. Sorry, ETC. Sorry, High End. I think they have some good features, but I've been kind of disappointed with some of the color mixing on them. And, look, we can point them at our other lights. But they're in the house, in the catwalk position there, and it's a house rule that we can't move them. So they kind of become this like front system out there that's kind of nice. Yeah. I've got 2 more Picassos out here. These are on the balcony rail. So these will end up filling in scenery. Honestly, these will probably end up filling in, like I was talking earlier about trying to fill in the stuff on this drop. Those will probably do that, and I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so those are good. Take those home. And then I've got these 2 solo spots here that are on top of my ladders. And if you notice right now, they're upside down. I'm gonna move them up above for right now, but this is a conversation that we actually have to have with our production electrician, because Dalton and I were talking about it, and we don't really want to have them upright like this. If you do a lot of work with moving lights, you'll know that like having them upside down when they're shooting downwards sometimes can be a pain in the ass. Like I can't hit this one down over here if I needed to. I can't hit this one down over here if I needed to. So we're going to see if we can engineer a way that rather than sitting on top of the dance towers, they'll actually be hung out on pipes so they can be underhung. But for now, because this is how they are in the plot, I'm going to do them like this. Take them home, turn them off. And then these are my R2 washes that are on the ladders. So these, maybe they'll be useful, maybe they won't. It's kind of hard to say right now. The R2 washes spill all over the place. They just came out with a top hat for the R2 wash that we need to get the theater to buy. So maybe on the next show we'll do that. And that's the moving lights. I've got my follow spots here as well. Obviously, like what I wish you could do, we tried to do this, and maybe you can, and I'm just not doing it right. But I want to be able to like take, when we use the robo spots, because the robo spots were spitting out DMX data. And And if we had an input gateway, we could have brought that data back in and had the follow spots potentially moving with the operators in Capture, which would have been really cool. That's a fun little thing I want to do at some point. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do it on this show because, again, we're using the manual versions instead of the others. But okay, so I think we have a fully patched rig. So we're almost on 2 hours now, so I apologize that this went so long, but hopefully it was useful for some people. I'm going to hang out for a few more minutes, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Anything lighting, career, school, anything like that. Shout them out in the chat. Let's say another, I'll be here for another 8 minutes or so until 4:50, and then I'll call it a day. I'm going to put myself in kind of in the bottom over here so I can keep clicking around in Capture while I answer your questions. There we go. Yeah, the top hats on the R2 washes. Yeah, it's like they made I think City Theatrical makes them. I could be wrong. They could be, don't quote me on that. It could be a Chauvet product, but they have like a spring clip that hooks around the back because it's one of the, like, we even wanted to do like make one with black wrap or something, and there was not really a good way to attach it because of the clearances involved. So I'm excited to see those. A question came in, what are you using for augmented reality? Do you mean like actual AR, or do you mean augmented as in the ETC product? I'm not really, I don't really do anything with AR currently. Once we get augmented installed and using it on a show, which probably realistically is not going to happen on this one. We might try it out in the park this year because the rig is kind of small. But I'm excited to try it. I just haven't yet. Another question, do you use mostly Mecanalys or another method? Yes, both. If you're not familiar with the Mecanalys method, it's basically, you've got lights coming in a 45-degree angle, you've got a warm and a cool, and blah, 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 blah. And so, yeah, there's definitely like aspects to that in the plot, in the design. But I don't stick to it 100%. So like you saw in this show, the majority of, let me pull up the plot real quick. The majority of the light in this show, front light wise, is coming from not the front. I've got my box booms that are doing some work for me, but the majority of my light is on stage. It's coming from my side light positions. It's coming from my ladders and things like that. So if I go to my front of house plate here, like there's very few instruments out here at front of house. I've got these box boom things and I've got that front fill. Everything else is coming in here on this side light plate. Oops. Like there's a shit ton, forgive my language, there's a shit ton of side light, and that's where most of that color comes from. And that's just more of like my musical theater style. So for musical theater, I'm doing a lot of that really saturated color coming from the sides, and then it's being cut through with follow spots. So the follow spots are super bright, big bright arc white sources that cut through that. And now if I was doing a play, if I pulled up, and it would take me too long to find them, but if I was going to pull up a plot for a play, I get a little bit more Mecanalys with that. So I might have my 45 systems, but a lot of, even in my work for straight plays and stuff like that, my musical theater background really is influenced a lot in that with a lot of my choices. Another question here. Are you able to turn on all the lights that you focused? Yes, I can do that for you. Let me save before I do that. My computer is already screaming at me because I'm streaming and using Capture and doing all this at the same time. Oh, Jesus. Okay. There you go. There's everything for you. You can see it auto-exposed down a little bit. And we can go system by system, but I'm not going to do that in today's video. I think the stream buffered when I did that. That was amazing. I'm going to quit Capture for now to kind of free up some resources on my system. I will do some kind of video stuff when we actually get on site for this show and in the park and stuff like that. Again, like one of my goals in this year was to do more educational content online and things like that. And I've so far have been failing at a lot of that. But hopefully it'll get better. Another question. I know you SketchUp for the set rendering, done much with Vectorworks with 3D. I have not in a long time. There's not really a reason for that. Like, it's obviously does 3D work. It does great work. I just personally haven't, because most of the stuff I'm doing right now is lighting plots. So like you can do a lot of the previous stuff that I'm doing. You have vision, you have all these things within Vectorworks. So again, like what I'm showing you is my workflow and how I do it, but it's not the one size fits all. Like you could do all of this stuff you could do probably in Vision and in Vectorworks natively. Question: do you think Vectorworks can be self-taught? It feels like I'm very fuzzy on the screen. I apologize for that. I think that had something to do with turning all my lights on at once. But hopefully my computer is going to catch up a little bit here. Do I think Vectorworks can be self-taught? I do. I think that, every piece of software I have, I think, is basically self-taught to me. I learned drafting, I learned in school, but I learned AutoCAD, I learned hand drafting. And so the problem with learning something like Vectorworks from scratch is you have to have that foundational understanding to understand why things are the way that they are, and why this line needs to be thicker, why that is. Anybody can learn like how to do those things in the program just by clicking around and playing with it, but the understanding the reasons behind it and why we're doing the stuff we're doing, I think is more important, and that's something that's a little bit harder to learn on your own. But I say that, but like it's also not true. Like with the internet now, like there's so many websites that you can go on and learn all these drafting standards and learn this, learn that. You can look at other people's plots. That's like one of the reasons I try to make all this stuff, like I share all this stuff with students, is because I want that resource. I want to be able to be that resource for students and for people just starting out, where you can get one example of how things are done. Again, like my way is not the perfect way. There are people who do way better work than me, or may have nicer drafting, or have this. But I like what I do, and I it's one more data set, or one more data point that I can share with people. So yeah, that was a very long-winded answer to your question. Hopefully, it answered it somewhat. All right, a couple more minutes. Any other questions before I sign off for the day? Sorry, I won't drink in front of the microphone. At some point this afternoon, I'll go through and I'll make those changes that we made in the plot and update the rental order and things like that. Probably saved $100 or so out of those lenses. We'll see. Next question is, when is the next stream? What an excellent question that is. The next step in this process with this particular show file is to go through and add motion control to all of our stuff. So if I pull in my calendar real quick, we go into tech. Let me make myself smaller. We go into tech in a couple of weeks. So I've got about 3 weeks before we go into tech. I go into tech right here. So probably maybe next weekend or sometime towards the end of next week, I'll do another stream, and I will do I'll do all the motion capture stuff on that. Or sorry, not motion capture, motion control stuff on that. And the motion control, again, like all of the scenic objects you saw today, I'll be able to take those and map those to DMX addresses. And then within the EOS, we can basically turn our scenery on and off for the different scene changes, which is pretty cool. Next question came in. Am I getting Capture 2020? Yeah, I've actually, maybe. I've been basically updating every year when Capture comes out. Over the years, I've started, I started, like I said earlier, in maybe 2015 or so with a very base license. And then depending on the needs of the various projects that I've made the investment to upgrade it over time. And so I've also done that in versions. There is an issue I read about the other day with some video card stuff with Capture 2020 and Macintosh computers. I need to do more research on that and see if I'm affected by that before I officially make the decision. But chances are, yes, eventually I'll end up doing it. I wonder why. It says I've dropped 67,000 frames so far in this, so hopefully the quality has been somewhat decent. If not, I'll yell at Comcast. All right. Any other questions before I sign off? We've still got a decent. We've got 12 people still here, so if anybody has anything, now's the time. I am wearing an MA hoodie. Sorry, all of you EOS people. Okay. Well, if that is it, then thank you all for participating. Oh, here's another one. It's possibly when it's possibly all the frame drops are when I turn off the lights. Yes, I have used Hog before. I actually recently had a somewhat corporate consulting gig. There was a client of mine who basically they had my client had a client who was one of those like national dance competitions, and they wanted me to come in and kind of give them a little bit of a theatrical background on some of the stuff that they were doing. And so I went to, I think, 4 or 5 cities with them, and that was all done on a Hog 4, which has been the first time I've actually used a Hog 4 professionally. I started out, my first like moving light console that I ever learned on was a Hog 500 and a Hog 1000. And so I was like, I used to be able to do anything on those. I used them in college. I could do it. I could do anything on them. And now not so much. Like it really was like a different language to go back and speak again. But it was good. Like we made some stuff happen, and the challenge there when you're switching you're switching languages basically between any console is to for me it's to like think of when I'm let me back up. So when I'm trying to learn a new console or trying to figure something out on a new console, I'll think of something that I want to do, like an effect sequence that I might know exactly how to create on the EOS, and then if it's an MA, I'll be like, okay, let me sit down and figure that out. And luckily, again, like with all the offline editors and with Capture and with MA3D and all these things, like you can practice on that stuff without having to have the hardware in front of you. I've had a couple of days when I was kind of getting back into the corporate world again and doing more stuff on the MA, where I just went to 4Wall for the day and I sat in the previs room with an MA full size and was like, all right, I'm going to start with a completely blank show file, and I'm going to build it from the ground up. And I did that twice, like completely from scratch both times, just to kind of get my feet wet on that. And that went really well. And then I went on from there. I did some songs, did some stuff like that. And then I just started kind of specking the console on corporate shows. And it was at that point, it's like, oh, this is a sink or swim. Like I'm going to get it or I'm not going to get it. I'm not throwing the iron on the trunk just in case. Like I'm going to this gig and there's an MA there and I'm going to be able to do what I need on it. So yeah. Do I provide some busking console setup tips? I'm at a disadvantage because I'm busking on an EOS Ion. So I wouldn't say that's a disadvantage. I mean, again, like it's just different ways of accomplishing the same thing, right? So I like MA for live stuff because I can quickly dump stuff to a button. I can quickly do that. And you can do all of that stuff on EOS too with macros and things like that. And you can set up those workflows. But I like the MA that it just happens so native. Like you don't have to do a lot of that extra stuff for it. I don't have anything right now as far as like any kind of write-up or tips on busking on an EOS Ion, and I'm probably not going to create anything because there's nothing that I can say that's going to not already be said, because ETC actually just released on their YouTube channel all kinds of videos specifically on this topic. They had a couple master classes a few years ago at Q. But yeah, there's all kinds of videos now specifically on busking on the EOS platform. And as the EOS has gotten better and better over the years at busking, you can do a lot with it. So if you go on my channel, I've got some, I was doing earlier this year, kind of end of last year, I did some, what I called like a 60-minute previs where I gave myself a challenge to program a song from scratch. Those were all done on the EOS. And for the most part, they were all kind of busk. Like I had some Q stacks playing, but a lot of it was done on subs because of the time frame involved. I didn't have time to time code it and everything like that. So you'll see a lot of mistakes in them. You'll see some stuff that doesn't quite line up. But that was all done on the EOS. So it's definitely possible. But I would highly recommend you go look at all of those videos that they just posted. So, I think I've answered all of the questions. And we just hit the 2-hour mark, so I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off. If anybody does have anything else that you want to reach out about, feel free to email me. Come check me out on Instagram at MikeWoodLD. And again, thank you all for joining me today, and I hope that I will be able to see you all again soon. I hope I'll be able to do this again soon. So yeah, thanks everybody.